enter this episode properly, I want you to close your eyes and start connecting to your breath. Take a few deep breaths in and exhales out. One more inhale and let it out. Final deepest breath together in and out. Make a sound. If you are a woman listening to this podcast, I just want you to follow my lead. And if you're a man, you can also do this meditation. Just replace all the feminine figures with masculine figures and do exactly the same thing. I want you to envision yourself with your eyes closed. Imagine that you are standing in a beautiful place that resonates with your soul. And as you stand there, you feel someone's hands gently touching your shoulders. You turn around and you see your mother, and she's standing there looking at you and smiling. You reach your hands with palms facing up, and your mom puts her palms on top of yours. And she tells you, I am big and you are small. I give and you receive. You have my blessing to have the life of your dreams. And then you notice that behind your mom, there is your grandma standing, touching the shoulders of your mother gently. And behind your grandma, there is your great-grandma, and so on. Start observing that powerful lineage of women that came before you. And keep going until you reach the first ever woman that started your lineage. Envision her. What is she looking like? What is she doing? Just spend a moment picturing that in your mind. And when you are ready, approach her. Put your palms facing up again and ask her for the blessing to live a happy, healthy, and fulfilled life. Say the words, I'm small and you're big. You give and I receive. I'm ready to welcome your power and your blessing for my happy life. And feel that connection with the source of the feminine power of your lineage. You can ask her the questions that might be coming up in your head. And when you're ready, thank her and come back to me. You can open your eyes. Hi, my dear listener. This is me back again with your weekly episode of inspiration and motivation on your way back to your authentic self. As you might have guessed by the introduction to today's episode, it will be about healing generational trauma, specifically through family constellation practice. Often in life, when we are struggling with repeated patterns that we cannot break through, with some blockages that continue appearing on our path, We don't realize that some of the things that we are dealing with are not ours. It might be something that has been passed to you from your parents or your grandparents or previous generations. There is so much family history that is left in the darkness that sometimes we're not even aware of the experiences that our ancestors went through and how they conditioned them to live their life and how they, as a result, conditioned their kids and so on. And one of the tools that I admire for working with things like that is family constellations. If you've never heard of family constellations, welcome. It's going to be my honor to open up the door to this truly effective techniques that helped so many, including myself. So what is family constellation? It's a technique that helps people identify and heal unhealthy family dynamics. What I love about family constellations, it really helps you shift the perspective on a certain problem and become an observer of your own family dynamic. I find it really, really hard to explain what it is and how it really works by using just words and logic. I would say that the best way to see what family constellation is to experience it. This is something that lives beyond our logical mind. That's why no matter how hard I will try to use the right words and sentences to explain what the hell that is, it won't compare to actually experiencing that at least once. But I promise I'll do my best. Family constellation method was introduced by Bert Hellinger, a German psychoanalyst, and it works with quantum field of energy. Because everything in this world is energy. And if you still don't believe this concept, what the hell are you even doing watching or listening to me? Because everything that I say is based on the fact that everything in life is energy. And I think that family constellations is the simplest tool to turn energy skeptics into energy believers. Because once you observe the process, it becomes really hard to stay skeptical. Here's what it looks like. A group of people is getting together. There is a facilitator who is guiding the entire process of constellations. There is a client who is coming with a specific request, which could be, I want to attract the right partner, and I seem to be attracting the wrong ones. Or I want to help myself with a body symptom that I've been struggling with, and all the doctors are telling me that there is nothing wrong with me. Or I want to heal my relationship with my children. Or I want to heal my relationship with my mother. And so on. And it could be basically anything. And what is important is to know that, let's say if you have a magic wand and you can just make it happen, what would be the ideal outcome in this situation for you? And then there are participants. Step number 1, client sits down with a facilitator and explains the request. Facilitator might ask some questions in the process about mom and dad of the client, about other family members, brothers, sisters, anything that might be related to the problem that the client is experiencing. And then the facilitator tells the client which specific family members he or she should put in a constellation. Let's say the facilitator says, please put the representative of yourself, your mother, and your father into a constellation. So what happens next? The client goes to this group of participants and chooses who's going to represent whom. Once the roles have been assigned, the client puts these people in certain positions against each other. For example, the client's representative may be closer to mom or dad, might be facing them, or even turned away completely, based on the way the client feels at the moment. And after that, client's job is done. He or she sits down and observes the rest of the show that is about to take place. I think it's very powerful for the client to actually take a step back here and become an observer of the bigger picture of the whole family dynamic. Because when we are in our role, we're so focused on what's going on with us and our relations to certain members of the family that it's really hard to see the bigger picture and understand what's causing this unhealthy dynamic. And I believe this is a great opportunity to just sit back and watch the movie of your life. The participants that are representing certain family members close their eyes, connect to their breath, and just take a moment to tap into what they're feeling. Because what happens in that moment, they are getting connected to that quantum field of that specific family dynamic. They're no longer feeling like themselves because they are connecting to the energy of that specific family. And in a few minutes, when everyone opens their eyes, slowly, one by one, facilitator starts asking questions to the client's representative. How are you feeling right now? Can you look at your mom? Can you look at your dad? Are you comfortable at the spot where you are? Do you want to move around and find a better position for yourself? And same with the rest of the constellation. So that way that family theater starts functioning and moving dynamically. Throughout the entire process, facilitator observes what's going on without judgment. And the goal here is to make these dynamics visible and create space for a change on the energetic level. There are 3 key principles here. First is belonging. All family members have an equal right to belong to the family system. The second is order. Hierarchy and order in the family system matter. And the third one is balance, because giving and taking, balance is important. Facilitator's role is to really observe where the energy flow is blocked and adjust the constellation accordingly so the paths are cleared and the energy starts flowing again from grandma to mother, from mother to daughter, and so on. The reason why I'm talking about all of this, I just spent last weekend doing family constellations with my first spiritual teacher that I briefly mentioned in one of my previous episodes. It was a very nice surprise when she messaged me and she said she was coming to Miami to do a family constellations workshop. And we really had an opportunity to dive pretty deep that past weekend. So now that you have hopefully a high level understanding of what family constellation is and what it's looking like, I want to share a few personal stories of my experience with family constellations that might give you a better understanding of how to work with it. I got introduced to the family constellations back in 2014. When I moved from Moscow to United States, I started having really bad headaches. And these headaches would get really, really bad on rainy days, putting me in a state where I couldn't study, I couldn't function, I couldn't do anything. After several attempts to heal those headaches with medical help, after going to multiple doctors and doing some tests, the doctors told me that I'm completely healthy and there's absolutely nothing wrong with me. So they couldn't really understand what was causing those headaches. But at the same time, I was still struggling. And it got to a point where painkillers like ibuprofen and Tylenol stopped working on me at all, because I got used to them. As a next logical step that doctors offered me was a light version of antidepressants that would prevent headaches from happening instead of treating the pain. I looked at my doctor and I said, but wait a minute, I am not depressed. Why would I do something like that? And he said that I'm not saying that you're depressed, but this is a light version of antidepressants that athletes use a lot to prevent their headaches, especially when they're training or participating in competitions. The side effects are very mild. You're not even going to feel it, but it might be able to help you with your headaches. I was very young when that conversation took place. I was 21 and I was suffering so much and I was so desperate that I agreed to that experiment. Thank God I only did it for 3 months, because those 3 months I didn't really live. I existed. If before I was living, I was feeling everything that I was feeling, including the headache. With this mild version of antidepressants, I felt nothing. Everything was kind of okay, but nothing really mattered that much. Zombie. And after 3 months, the doctor said, well, you're not having headaches anymore, so the problem's solved. And I said, well, yes, I don't, but I don't really care about anything. Don't you think that's a bigger problem? I'm not going to go deeper into this conversation about antidepressants, but if you somehow ended up listening to this episode, I'm going to tell you right away, please don't do it. I would never recommend anyone getting on antidepressants unless you tried everything else and nothing worked for you and you're desperate and you're on the edge of like taking your life, then maybe. But this is a more serious case. But if your situation not as bad, please don't do that to yourself. Antidepressants are not healing the root cause of your struggles. They are making your symptoms disappear. And that's like putting a band-aid on top of the pavement where the cars are driving. That's not going to help you in the long run. So please, before you put yourself on something that you will depend on, please really think it through. Anyways, back to my story. When I stopped taking antidepressants, the headaches came back. And then I went to visit my family during the summer. And as I was coming back, those headaches were just out of this world. They were killing me. And that's how I was brought to a family constellation workshop for the first time. And let me tell you, the person who did my constellation, she remembers that constellation up to this day. Because every single participant who was in my constellation and the facilitator herself, from the moment we put everyone in, started feeling horrible headache. Impossible to handle. Yeah, tell me quantum field doesn't exist. Not everything in life is energy. Right. Long story short, through that family constellation practice that we did that day, we were able to discover that that headache is coming from my father's lineage, and we started digging deeper. When the participants of the family constellation all are looking down all of a sudden, that means that they're looking at something that is not in the constellation yet, which might be unaccepted family member, unborn child, or a child that was born outside of the family and was never even brought into the family dynamic, or someone who passed away. The headache got better. When we put a pillow as a representation of something that we're not aware of, something that happened but was not accepted or seen, the headache lightened up. And the facilitator told me, Sasha, listen, this is most likely an abortion in family history, unaccepted family member, or a child outside of marriage. I was fucking shocked. It took me a month to process that before I decided to speak to both of my parents separately and explain what the hell I just did, what I've learned, and to ask some questions. And because this is such a sensitive topic, I talked to my mom first separately, and then I talked to my dad. And both of them said that, hey, like no abortions, no children outside of the family. Well, obviously that would be a question just for my dad, because with mom, you can't really hide a child. And a week later, my mom came back to me saying, hey, let me tell you a story of your grandmother from your father's side. Maybe that will bring some clarity to the situation that you saw. And she told me the following. When my great-grandmother from father's side was pregnant with my grandma, her husband left to the war and never came back. So husband's parents told her, we have no proof that the child that you are carrying is actually our son's. They had no DNA testing back then, nothing. So they refused to support my great-grandmother and her future child. And when my grandma was born, Her mom had no money and resources to raise her, so she gave her to orphanage. And only when my grandmother was 11 or 12, she started looking exactly like her dad. And his parents realized that they made a huge mistake by rejecting that child. So what they did, they took her back from the orphanage. But let me ask you, do you think back then people did therapy in situations like that? Do you think those emotions were ever processed? I wouldn't even discover that story about my grandmother if I wouldn't do the constellation practice to begin with. That grandmother is no longer with us, and I wasn't very connected with her when she was alive because she was very secretive. She wouldn't say much. She was very introverted. She would show me love when I would visit, but she would never speak about anything. And I can only assume that that feeling of a rejected child stayed with her forever and affected her life and was passed to me in the symptom of a headache. As a result of this constellation, not only I was able to learn the story of my grandmother, but also my headaches got so much better and eventually disappeared. Why I love family constellations so much, because it really helps you break free from those dysfunctional generational patterns. It helps you heal those generational wounds so they're not going to get passed to the future generations. It really helps you strengthen your identity and your belonging in this family dynamic. Past weekend when my teacher was here, I initially showed up only as a participant. I wasn't planning on having my own constellation. When you are involved in the constellation as a participant, you're also getting so many insights for your own questions. I can't really explain how it works, but you always end up standing in the exact role where you need to be standing right now and learning things that you need to be learning right now. And throughout that workshop, I participated in multiple constellations of other people that I didn't even know. I was standing for someone's grandfather, and it really helped me understand man more, because what I felt initially was this constant anxiety and worry about everything that is going on in the family. My wife is not looking at me. She's attached to the child and not letting him be his own person, be an adult, be the man that he needs to become. And there is so much resentment. And all I wanted to feel as this grandfather in that moment was peace and balance, like everything is under control. When we resolved those energy barriers and people started feeling lighter in that constellation, only then, when my wife hugged me and my son was standing in front of me, I realized that, all right, now we're good. Now I feel like a man, because I want to feel this way. When everything is chaotic, I feel like this is all my fault and I'm failing everyone. Really gives you a perspective on how men feel in different situations, right? And then in another constellation, I was an aborted child and I felt peaceful. I could see the tears of my mother, but all I kept saying, I'm good. That's okay. I'll find a way to come in to your lineage later. Don't worry about it. And then I was a mother of 2 daughters, where the family hierarchy was broken. And one of daughters didn't see herself as equal to her sister. She was putting herself below the older sister, always thinking like her sister is her mom, which is unnatural for a family dynamic. The energy is not flowing properly through generations. That's what needed to be fixed and put back in place. I also played a role of child being born, brought into this world. And I experienced that first connection between mother and her child right after birth, that DMT moment. When your mom is looking at you like you're the most precious thing in this world, which you are. I don't have kids myself, so for me, this is all an unknown territory that I got exposed to during that practice. And of course, we ended up doing a constellation for me as well. We put myself, my mom, and my grandmother. And I wouldn't say that I was really surprised by what I saw. I understood that our constellation is shaped in the wrong way. It's not a hierarchy of grandma, mom, and myself. It's a triangle where there's a lot going on between my mom and my grandma. There is a lot of resentment between my mom and my grandmother. And there is a lot of shame and guilt there as well. And while we were not able to fully restore the energy flow through generations, we were able to shift some things in the energy field. And maybe one day I can finally take my spot as a daughter in this whole system, not as an outsider. And through that family constellation, I received another major insight related to my power and what I definitely need to be doing in this world to heal the feminine. It's movement. It's dancing. I've been dancing my entire life because my mom brought me there. My mom wanted to be a dancer, but she never got a chance. So that dream came true through me. And when I dance, that's healing for her. And I know that those movements are healing for so many. And I mentioned previously that in 2021, I created my own dance meditation practice. And I used to have in-person events in Los Angeles. But I haven't done anything with it since I moved to Miami. And I think it's time to bring that back and spread that healing to other women. So I challenge myself to work on that and make it happen in Miami and online as well. Comment if you would be interested in something like that online. It's been a few days since the family constellation practice, and honestly, I'm feeling great. I'm feeling happy. I'm feeling fantastic. I feel like some things started shifting right and left. Because remember, the goal of this whole practice is not to discover the history of what happened. The goal is to look at everything that is there, accept it, and remove the blocks for the energy flow. So the river of life keeps bringing you where you need to be. I hope you are all feeling this flow. We are entering a very interesting time of this year as we're approaching March. Trust me, March of this year will be very transformational for everyone. Expect the unexpected. Manifest your deepest desires. See your dreams come true. If you've been doing the work, you're getting rewarded. On that note, sit down, do some sort of gratitude meditation. Thank your parents for giving you life, because your life is the most precious gift. So use it wisely and don't waste it. I'll see you next week.